But he doesn't understand. There's a curse upon me. I change into a wolf.
Listen to me, Frank. I saw my father become obsessed by his power. He died a horrible death.
There's no need for us all to storm after her. She'll come in if I ask. Why should we treat her so fancy? She's a Frankenstein. Yeah.
And good morning, my friends. Welcome to day 4 of 31 Days of Monsters. Today we're discussing 1943's Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. This is an interesting film for a number of reasons. It was the direct sequel to The Wolfman from 1941 and the direct sequel to Ghost of Frankenstein, which of course was a sequel to Son of Frankenstein, which was a sequel to Bride of Frankenstein, which is a sequel to Frankenstein. So it continued that line. This movie is the first time, I think, in movie history that there was a crossover where they paired up, where a studio paired up two of their characters together. Maybe some comedies did that. I can't think of any, but certainly it gave rise to that shared universe here. And this is the movie that started it all. Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. It was written by Kurt Siodmak, who was the creator and writer of The Wolfman, creator of Lawrence Talbot and all the tropes that we know about werewolves, and the poem, even a man who is pure at heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright. They changed that poem in this film to when the moon is full and bright, I guess, to give the Wolfman more times, Larry Talbot more times a year to change into the Wolfman. This is the first monster movie I ever saw. This is the one that launched me into my love of monster films. I was 6 or 8 years old. I can't quite remember. And I wanted to see it. My mom let me. I had to watch it in her bed on the TV in her room while she folded laundry. Mom was a teacher, and she was concerned that it was going to be maybe too intense, and I might have gotten scared. But I loved it. I was like, oh my God! But I will say, I was frightened by the Wolfman. He was so scary with those beady eyes and stuff, and that's why I became a lifelong Frankenstein fan. I thought he was the good guy. Because this is a direct sequel, and because Lon Chaney Jr. played the Frankenstein monster in Ghost of Frankenstein, and of course he created the role of the Wolfman. Originally, he was going to play both roles, but they think they wisely figured out that was going to be a logistical nightmare because of all the makeup effects and everything. So they hired Bela Lugosi. Oh, we got a pumpkin. Hello, pumpkin. Got a pumpkin alert, to play the role of the monster. And Bela, interestingly enough, was up for the original role of the 1931 version of Frankenstein, coming off the success of Dracula. But he felt he was going to get buried under the makeup and made just one of many career errors, and gave rise to his biggest competitor, Boris Karloff, who killed in that role. Let's see, what else was I going to talk about with this thing? It has one of, in my opinion, one of the two greatest Universal Monsters openings. The first is the original Mummy with Boris Karloff, where the mummy comes to life, and he walks over and takes the the piece of paper, papyrus, from the guy examining it. That when you see him waking up, it's creepy as hell. But in this film, it opens up with such evocative imagery of these two grave robbers going to the tomb, the Talbot tomb, where Lawrence and John Talbot, his father, were buried, and they tie in stuff from the Wolfman into this film as well, talking about how John Talbot had died of grief after killing his son because he had hit him with the silver cane, if you remember, in the Wolfman. And so these two grave robbers go in there, and because they've heard rumors that Lawrence Talbot was buried with gold and his watch and things of value, and they're gonna steal it. And of course, it's a full moon, and they open up the tomb, and the body is just covered in wolfbane, and they can't figure that out, and they open it up. And they're trying to get this ring off his finger. And what was really, really a cool effect was that you see that Talbot's fingernails grew. And that happens, to bodies. The hair and fingernails continue to grow for a period of time. So it had these long fingernails. And then the hand kind of comes up like this, and while the guy's working on the other hand and goes like this, it goes and grabs him. And, he's just freaking out, and his buddy just bails on him and runs out, and they drop a lantern, and it causes a fire in there. And that's how this movie opens. Fantastic imagery. It's really, really great. The problem, this is a movie of what ifs, if only. This could have been the greatest of them all. But due to the fact that it was a direct sequel to Ghost of Frankenstein, in Ghost of Frankenstein, Igor from Son of Frankenstein, this might sound complicated if you haven't seen any of these movies, but I'll try and clean it up for you. Bela Lugosi played Igor, the hunchback, who sort of had a love affair with the monster. And he wanted his brain transplanted into the monster's body so that he would no longer have a hunchback, and he would live forever. And that happens at the end of Ghost of Frankenstein. Much to the shock of the doctor, he didn't know what he was doing, and blah, blah, blah. So the very end, it's kind of creepy because they dub over Bela Lugosi's voice over, because Lon Chaney Jr. played the monster in Son of Frankenstein. And he's like, he's going to rule the world, and he's talking like Bela, blah, blah, blah. And, but then he finds out he goes blind because the blood didn't match, or some kind of pseudoscience nonsense. And so the monster's blind, and you think he's consumed in a fire and blah, blah, blah. So fast forward to Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. And they have Bela playing the monster, which is perfect casting, because now when he's revived, he's still Bela with Igor's brain in him, and he's blind. And this is why when we see this movie, and why whenever you say, hey, do an impression of Frankenstein, you see somebody walking like this with the hands out and everything like that. Well, Boris Karloff never played him like that. And the reason for that is the monster's blind, just like he was in the previous film. But the monster can also speak. But when they showed it to a test audience, and they had Bela, having soliloquies and talking, the audience laughed. And so the producers are like, oh shit, we put all this money into this thing, and it's going to crash and burn. So they excised all the dialogue sequences, as well as certain film sequences. If you watch the movie, you can see there are scenes where Bela's mouth is moving, like in the background where he's talking, but there's no voice coming out of it. So there's never any mention of the creature being blind, or any mention that he's got Igor's brain and has this intelligence to him. Let me just okay. So this is that sequence I was talking about here, where see the hand here, grabbing the guy. And before they go in there, they're walking into this step down part of the graveyard, and there's dead trees and leaves blowing and everything. It's so evocative. It's so great. Okay, here's a sequence where Lawrence Talbot finds the monster frozen in ice. And I always thought this sequence was really great. As a kid, it just seems so authentic, him being in the ice like that. And when he's chipping it away, it's obviously not Bela in there. It's a stuntman. But it sure looks like real ice that's getting chipped away and not like plastic or polyurethane or anything like that. So they sold me on it. Okay, here's an example of Bela walking as the monster with his hands outstretched and his head looking back like that, because he's blind. Now, this is a really great sequence. Now, Bela was really too old for this role. He wasn't in good health. He was like 63, I think. And because they removed all his dialogue, he has actually very little time on screen. I think it's just 6 minutes. And the rest of the time is stuntmen doing all the heavy lifting because he was unable to do that. But one of the really cool aspects, and if you're watching it in the audience and not knowing about the fact that the monster is supposed to be blind, is when his sight returns. And Dr. Mannering, he can't help himself, so he's got to revive the monster to see it in its full strength. So instead of draining off Larry Talbot's life energy, which is what he wanted to kill himself, he recharges the monster here. And this is the sequence where the monster regains his sight. And Bela is just so wonderfully evil in his look. Here we go. And, you think that the monster is just kind of like being evil or something like that. But in reality, this is Igor in his malevolent thought processes and his eyes opening, or his sight returning, and he can see. Now he's all charged up and powered up and ready to roll. Oh, I should have shown this one first, but this is one of the cut scenes where after the monster's been freed, he's talking to Larry Talbot. There's a whole sequence here where they're talking. And this is one of those holy grail things for me. It's like, I hope that this is in some vault somewhere. So this is the soundtrack that could be reintroduced and put back into the film. How cool would that be to see Bela, acting, and speaking in stuff nobody has seen since 1943. That would be amazing. So this is it's a great B movie. It's certainly not at the level of the first three Frankenstein films. It could have been an incredible A movie if they didn't run into some of those problems that they did. But be that as it may, you guys should watch it. It's still a lot of fun. You probably wouldn't have that shared Marvel universe if you didn't have the Universal Monsters shared universe first. So we had this actually saved Universal from bankruptcy, this film, because it did so well at the box office. And at this point on, they figured, well, you know what? From now on, we're gonna increase the box office value by sticking more than one monster in each film. And so after this was House of Frankenstein, which was the first monster rally because it had a mad doctor, it had a hunchback assistant, it had Frankenstein, it had Dracula, and it had the Wolfman. And then they repeated that with House of Dracula. And that was the last of the monster cycle until Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein, which is more of a parody, but they treated the monster straight in that. But that was truly the end of the Universal Monsters from the original era until the Creature from the Black Lagoon came. But so there we go, guys. It's a great one. Go watch it. Let's see who's here this morning. George Travelos, hello. Hyper Kaiju is here. Good morning. Pop Culture Avenger says good morning. I said good morning. Dr. Mask is here. Hail Graham, hail chat. Going to listen while I'm working, but at least I made it on time. Excellent. Nerd and Noob says good morning, everyone. JP Roca wants to know what's good. Frankenstein meets the Wolfman's good. Normie Nerd is here. Good morning. Monster Fan, good morning. Man of War is here. Good morning. Prater 7, good morning. Hyper Kaiju says pumpkin sighting, and there's another one. She just jumped up on my knees. Hello, Fritter. Hello, Pumpkin Fritter. Oh, there she is. There she is. There's nothing more horrifying than a hungry basset hound. The heck with the Wolfman. You don't know what you're dealing with till you've met a hungry basset hound. So travel as well. It's Monday, but at least we have Graham talking about monsters. Yes, this is to lift you up every morning so you can go to work and earn lots of money. Do I hear pumpkin? Yes, you do. Stat Zero's here. Good morning. Stat loves this flick, he says. What studio affected movies even back then? What studio affected movies even back then? Haha. Yeah, I love that aspect of it, the connected universe. It was probably because I loved monsters before I went into comics, and this is the first one I'd ever seen. It's probably why I gravitated to that continuity in comics too, because I saw it in a movie. You know. Hey, thanks so much for the super chat there, George. Thank you for the daily show, he says. Well, this is my pleasure. No, I won't be getting the 4K because I don't have a 4K television. Nothing's broadcast in 4K yet, so I'll come late to that party. Let's see. Hyper Kaiju says, I watched this yesterday and noticed a scene with his mouth moving while no one was talking. I thought something was wrong with my video, LOL. Well, now you know. Now you know the backstory. You know, another, I don't know if you want to say problem with the casting was that Lon Chaney was a big man. And even with, yeah, here we go. Even with the big ass asphalt layer boots that Bela is wearing, he's almost the same height as Chaney Jr. You know, so proportionally, you know, in a shot like this, that's an issue. You know, the monster should be a lot bigger, more imposing. Low chance of that back when they usually discarded the cut stuff. Super rare to see any more than a few seconds of supplemental. Well, they found all the cut scenes from King Kong, except for the spider sequences. But I tend to agree because King Kong was broadcast or shown in movie theaters in 1933, the full on. So there was a chance that theaters around the world would have that imagery. This film was cut before it was released, so I'm pretty sure you're right that we'll never see it. But you know, maybe there was somebody in the cutting room who was a collector, you know, a Bob Burns type guy, and saved it. You know, I like to hold on to hope that it's out there somewhere. What about Bride of Dracula? Oh, Bride of Dracula as far as a sequel? Yeah, it's a good point. You know, Bride of Dracula came out, I think, the same year, 1931 or 1932. and it is a direct sequel. Unfortunately, Bela's not in it because they couldn't come to contract terms. So they had a wax dummy sit in for his body. But it would have been great if Dracula was actually in it. But yeah, I think you're right. I guess that would be the first. Well, no. That would be a sequel, yes, but it's not. It's not the first. It's not a shared universe because it's not bringing in a character outside of the canon of Dracula. So sad the Universal Monsters reboot a few years ago went so poorly. They've tried to reboot it a few times. They started with that Dracula. I forget what the full title of it was, but again, it's handsome Dracula. Dracula's a horrible creature. He's a leech, a human leech. If you've read the Bram Stoker book, he smells. He's just a horrible thing. He's an undead creature, and all these sparkly vampires and handsome, Lothario vampires, just don't do it for me. I want to see that real horrific creature. Then they tried to reboot it with The Mummy, as a action film for Tom Cruise, and that tanked. And I think Blumhouse tried it with The Invisible Man, which became more like an expose or an indictment on spousal abuse, if you will. So I watched it actually. I watched most of it. I was on an airplane when I watched it, and it was actually pretty good. But it never really fit into, the Universal Monsters. It was just another horror film. It didn't feel like a Universal Monster film. So they haven't been able to, the real kickoff should have been the Wolfman with Benicio del Toro. That should have been the kickoff because that was true horror, and it harkened back to, a more modern update of the Wolfman. That should have be what kicked it off. But again, they cut it in such a way. It was a boring film. Didn't make a lot of sense in places. The director's cut is much better. Still not a great film, but it's definitely makes more sense now. The Dracula book was great. Still need to read Frankenstein. Yeah, Stoker's book is great. It's like 19th century pulp fiction of its day. But Frankenstein, I've tried to read Frankenstein 4 or 5 times, and it is a tough slog. It's really hard to get through. I have not been able to get through it yet, but you give it a shot. I have a fondness for the 1979 Dracula with Frank Langella. Great John Williams score, too. Yeah, that's a good one. I was just talking about that yesterday. Julie and I watched, because I've changed my list. I've added a couple things and removed a couple things from the monster list. One of the things I added was the 1977 BBC Count Dracula starring Louis Jourdan, which is the most accurate to the book movie to date. So that I hadn't seen that one in probably 40 years. So that one's going to be a fun one to discuss. Stat Zero says that Invisible Man didn't sit right with me. The whole point was the race against time and madness. That guy was a dick from the get-go with a suit. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he was already a psychopath. It wasn't that his experiments into the unknown created him, because outside of Dracula, all the Universal monsters had pathos to them. They didn't ask for what happened to them. Some of them made bad choices and some of them had hard luck. but there's always the empathy you would have for that creature, with the exception of Dracula. Dracula is just a horrible creature, and there's no empathy for him. It's one of the reasons I love Dracula. He's such a, you're rooting for Harker and Van Helsing, and in the book, the guy from Texas, and there's like a whole little cadre of vampire hunters that go after him in the book. It's pretty cool. Maybe that is why it's still on the shelf. No, I don't hate you for this statement. It's my favorite monster movie. It's my favorite Universal monster movie, the original Frankenstein with Boris. And that's the image in my head. And Shelley's Frankenstein is, like I said, it's she wrote it in the 1700s, or no, late early 1800s, early 1800s. So the style of writing is very dated. Obviously it's not like science-based, they hardly have their aspect of science is completely different. They never really tell you what it was that brought him. It's sort of like the mysterious something of life. So yeah, it's completely different. And the monster is, very intellectual, and can speak. He runs on soliloquies, which is cool. But it just doesn't. It's hard to get through. I don't know what else to say. How about Brendan Fraser as a modern professor who finds out that his great-grandfather was the hero of the 90s Mummy series? You know what? The 90s Mummy, the first one, was quite good as a rollicking adventure tale. They captured the feel of the original Mummy, the Imhotep mummy, but then they also tied in that adventure, that two-fisted adventure that I loved in the sequel, The Mummy's Hand, with Dick Foran, who was like a two-fisted archaeologist, and as opposed to like a French Foreign Legion guy. And they had humor in it, and that movie I really, really enjoyed that. The sequel's not so much. What guests are you having on the show this year? Which show? This one? 31 Days of Monsters? Well, I will reveal that when I'm good and ready. I have to look at my list. I do want to have some guests on to come on and talk about certain movies. I will have on October 30th, I'll tell you this one. Right now, I scheduled my brother is going to be on. If you remember the show I did on the Storytellers with him, he's going to come on and we're going to talk about War of the Gargantuas, which was a film the two of us saw in the theater together. We had a lot of fun memories about that movie. Bela Lugosi's Dracula is my favorite. Yeah. I love him, and I love Christopher Lee too. Oh wait, there's part 2 to that Danky Frankie's thing. He has to find this. Let me read them together. How about Brendan Fraser as a modern professor who finds out that his great-grandfather was the hero of the 90s Mummy series? He has to find his heroism to save the girl he loves. He won't love him until he proves he is worthy of her. Not quite sure. He has to find his heroism to save the girl he loves. She won't love him until he proves he is worthy of her. Well, then she's not worth having, is she? Oh, wait, there's more. Thank you. Frankie's writing a whole script here. It helps that Brendan Fraser is fat now because it makes him more relatable. To win the girl he loves, he has to become a hero. This would allow an exploration of what it takes to be a hero. It sounds like we've seen that story. But write it up, submit it. In the Frankenstein movie, I feel bad for the creature. In the book, he's more of a calculated killer. He kills people to seek revenge and for spite. I much prefer the movie. Oh, Danky Frankie's, he listened to it as an audiobook. That's not a bad idea. Listen to it on the background, in the background. Maybe I'll do that. That's a good idea. Maybe outside your wheelhouse, but Iced Earth has an album called Horror Show that includes songs from many of the Universal monsters, one of my favorites. Iced Earth. Oh, I'll have to seek that out. Even the De Niro Frankenstein was a little tough to get through. Yeah, that was a lot of tough to get through. I thought Kenneth Branagh was I don't know. And hiring De Niro, what is he, the New York Monster, was not a good choice. And Branagh just, I don't know, there's something about that film that bothered me. It's been many years. I only seen it once when it came out. But it just doesn't do it for me. And I don't plan on seeing it again, so I won't be able to reaffirm my thoughts on it or bolster them up because it's I didn't like it. No, Hyper Kaiju's given a thumbs up for that Iced Earth album. An old horror host would be cool. Yeah, well, how many of them are there? There's not too many left. No, there is Svengoolie. That's true. Get Elvira on. The entire cast of the 99 Mummy was awesome. Everyone was great at their part. I think that was a huge part of why it was so good and entertaining. Oh, absolutely. That and a good script. Like Joseph says, wish they'd release War of the Gargantuas and Rodan on Blu-ray already. I thought War of the Gargantuas was on Blu-ray. I know it was on the Criterion channel, and I thought everything they showed was remastered on Blu-ray, but I could be wrong. Graham, have you looked at that movie mentioned yesterday, or so-called The Host, the 2006 Korean movie, to be clear, directory? No, I have not. I have not, but I'm going to look it up. The Host. And what year was it? 2006. Okay, I'll look it up. We've seen every story before. What it takes to be a hero is what every good story is about. Isn't that what Campbell called the monomyth? Yes, Campbell called it that, but there are many authors that disagree with his theories. Okay, for his Frankenstein audiobook that's available as part of Audible's membership club, so it's free if you're in it for what it's worth. Okay, cool. Oh, yeah. You need to check out Dog Soldier sometime. Free to watch on YouTube. Pretty good werewolf flick. Yeah, I've heard a lot of stuff about Dog Soldiers. Somebody brought it up last year, and I forgot about it. So I'm going to write that one down too. Dog Soldiers. Oh, Mike Joseph says Criterion has him streaming, but hasn't released either movie on disc yet. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Dr. Mass Retro Elixir for sure. But be warned, Frankenstein is hard to get to, even as an audiobook. Oh, okay. Oof. Maybe just stick to the Boris Karloff version, huh? Stat Zero is not a Campbell guy. Yeah, a lot of guys aren't, Chuck Dixon would argue that entire premise of Campbell. And I highly respect his ability to write. All right, gang. I've covered everybody in here. Once again, thank you for the super chat. Tomorrow, we're going to go a little sci-fi and talk about one of the first alien movies or alien invasion movies. The classic Robert Wise, The Day the Earth Stood Still. Excellent, excellent sci-fi film from 1951, which was a banner year for alien invaders. So we'll talk about that one tomorrow. Until then, my friends, we shall see you. Have a good one. Bye-bye now.